I knew the evening was over before the evening began. We had barely cleared the glowing awning of the bistro when she stopped beside my car, tilted her chin, and asked, "Is this a rental?" Because if it is, I'm not wasting my time. Her name was Nina. She had the kind of poise that photographs well sleek hair, immaculate coat, a smile calibrated for reflections in glass. The streetlight caught the hood of my Volvo S60, and for a second I could see the faint constellation of scratches you only notice if you've owned a thing long enough to stop pretending it's new. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I unlocked the door, told her goodnight, and got in. She hovered there as if some better line was supposed to arrive to save. The moment then stepped back when I started the engine. I pulled away without drama, no tire squeal, no cinematic flourish. Just the gentle turn of the wheel and the steady blink of the indicator as I merged into the slow river of cars heading home. The apartment was quiet when I walked in. I hung my coat on the chair I should have replaced years ago and set my keys in a chipped ceramic dish. My phone buzzed once, then stopped. I powered it down before the second buzz came through. I slept better than I expected. In the morning, the device woke to itself with a tremor of pent-up notifications. The lock screen stacked them like a reckless deck of cards, 21 missed calls stamped between 12:10 a.m. and 7:40 a.m., her number over and over, and a column of messages that changed color as the hours changed temperature. The earliest texts were brisk and scolding. "What's your problem?" "You're being dramatic." By 2 a.m, confusion seeped in. "Are you okay?" "Answer your phone." Near dawn, the language softened. Softened again, then frayed outright. "Please call me. I'm sorry." "I didn't mean it like that. Please." I set the phone down and let the kettle whistle. The window above my sink shows a slice of the city I've always liked, the old brick bakery with painted letters half erased by time, a stand of plane trees that drop their bark like snakes shedding old skin. I stirred coffee, watched the brown spiral clear, and finally scrolled through the thread. The feeling wasn't anger. It was the steady cool you get after you've named a thing correctly and it can't surprise you anymore. We had been seeing each other for 2 months, long enough for patterns to assert themselves. I'd noticed the way Nina's eyes skimmed a room and sorted it couture retail thrift, condo rental crash pad, aspirational maintaining falling behind. She had a gift for it, and I had pretended it was just taste. My sister Maya didn't pretend. "You like puzzles," she told me, "but you keep mistaking people for puzzles." My friends were gentler, if not less direct. After one late dinner, Eli had shrugged and said, "She's very interested in the scoreboard." I heard them. I just filed the words in the drawer where warnings go to grow quiet. The car, for the record, is 4 years old. It's paid off, not flashy, and it suits me. There's a satisfaction in simple machines that do what they're asked to do. The question Nina asked wasn't about rims or mileage. It was about terms. Rental meant temporary, meant not yours, meant she could assess me with a glance and an exit plan tucked under her tongue. A question like that tries to turn the rest of the night into a negotiation you didn't agree to have. And then there was the other piece, less glamorous than a dinner check and far more expensive over time. Nina lived in a small brick 8-unit building my family has kept for decades. It isn't a portfolio, it's an heirloom that happens to have plumbing. My grandfather, who wore a hat every day of his life, bought it with the winnings from a contract he landed in 1971, and for years he fixed boilers with his own hands. We hire a property manager now, a man named Mr. Whitaker, who served as a fire marshal before retirement, and who still carries himself like a corridor you don't loiter in. When Nina began looking for a new place in the spring, I made a call. I asked Whitaker to offer a friends and family rate a $400 concession below market. Nothing in writing, he said at the time, because the lease is standard. I can note a temporary concession in the file and apply it as a credit. If the owners change their mind, we can adjust with notice. I had nodded and thanked him. Generosity feels easy when you think you'll want to keep giving it. I put the coffee down and opened my laptop. Somewhere in the sedimentary layers of my inbox, there was an email from Whitaker with Nina's signed lease attached. It took 4 keyword searches and 1 detour through an unrelated invoice to find it. I clicked the PDF and skimmed the clauses, the fossilized language of buildings and boundaries. The lease was standard, exactly as he'd said. The part I paused at was Clause 3C, concessions and adjustments, dry words that do a lot of work in the world. Any non-fixed concession may be modified or revoked with 30 days written notice effective on the first day of the next full rental period. The text didn't spark triumph. It set an order to the morning. I called Whitaker. He answered on the 3rd ring with the crackle of talk radio in the background. "Whitaker, it's Adrian," I said. "Do you have a minute?" "For you two," he said, and I could hear the scrape of his chair and the click as he lowered the volume. "What's the fire?" "No fire," I said. "A correction." I told him Nina and I weren't seeing each other anymore. I told him the concession had been a personal favor I'd asked for, and that I wanted to end it at the earliest date the lease allowed. He didn't ask why. That's one of the things I like about older men who have dealt with both buildings and people. They understand that explanations often multiply the mess. "All right," he said. "Let me pull the file." I listened to a brief burrow of typing. Yes, standard lease, no addenda concession is recorded as a monthly credit. Per 3C, in the local ordinance, we need 30 days written notice. Today is September 9th. If I post and mail the notice today, the full rent will be due November 1st. That works, I said. I'll cite the clause and the reason as revocation of discretionary concession. He went on already in the language of forms. No change to other terms. I'll stamp it, drop a copy in the mail, and put the paper on her door. Anything else you want in there? No, I said. That's enough. There was a small pause on the line. When he spoke again, his voice stepped half a notch toward personal. You doing okay? I looked at the cooling ring the mug had left on my table and at the phone face down beside it. Yes, I said. I just want everything clean. Clean, he repeated, approving the word. I'll send you a PDF once it's posted. After we hung up, I washed the cup and wiped the table. The apartment held that bright after rain kind of morning where even dust looks temporarily forgiven. I checked my phone one more time. The unread count glowed like a challenge. I archived the thread instead of opening it again and put the device in a drawer. On the way to work, I took my usual route along the river. Cyclists breezed past with lights winking on their spokes. A bus hissed at a stop doors, exhaling passengers who adjusted straps and collars and faces. I let the Volvo settle into its unhurried hum, the cabin a small, honest space that didn't ask you to be more than itself. Somewhere between the bakery and the turn toward the office, the knot in my chest loosened. Not because I had won anything, but because I had refused to compete in a game I hadn't agreed to. At lunch, the email arrived a scan of the notice of rent adjustment, one-page date stamped, addressed to Nina citing Clause 3C, and the 30-day requirement effective November 1st signed in Whitaker's square hand. The wording was tidy and impersonal. That is what I wanted, no editorial, no scolding, no flourish. Just the line where generosity ended because the reason for it had ended first. That evening, when the day had burned itself down to quiet, the messages resumed. You can't be serious. This is because of last night, isn't it? This is petty. I let them accumulate without reply. A call came in. I watched it run its course and settle into voicemail. The apartment took on the soft, low volume of evening neighbors' footsteps, passing like weather overhead, the radiator giving a sleepy tick. I made something simple for dinner and sat by the window with a book I barely read. There's a point where decisions stop feeling like choices and start feeling like the shape of a life you want to live. By the time the street outside thinned to the occasional taxi, by the time the upstairs television clicked off and the building exhaled into after hours, I understood what had shifted. I hadn't punished anyone. I had finally stopped subsidizing a version of myself I didn't like being around. When I turned off the lamp, the room held a crisp dark that belonged to early fall. The city felt newly legible. Somewhere on the second floor, a sink ran and stopped. A door latched. I slept and didn't dream. In the morning, Whitaker's second email was waiting, proof of mailing attached notice, posted file updated. I replied with a thank you and closed the laptop. The coffee tasted better than the day before, as if the same beans had found a cleaner path through hot water. I stood at the window until the sun tugged a dull shine from the river, and then I got on with the ordinary tasks of an ordinary day. The car outside wore yesterday's pollen like a light dusting of memory. I wiped the windshield with my sleeve and thought, not for the first time, that the most faithful objects are the ones that neither flatter nor accuse. I slid behind the wheel, the key turned, the engine caught, and the morning took me where mornings go. The night didn't end so much as it thinned out and disappeared. By early evening, the hum of the building had settled into the familiar tape loop water through pipes, someone laughing in the stairwell, a door catching and then closing on the second try. I reheated soup, answered 2 work emails, and read the same paragraph in a novel 3 times without absorbing a word. Around 8, my phone lit up on the table and began to behave like a small, insistent animal. The first text landed without punctuation, as if speed alone could make it reasonable. You can't be serious about the rent. The second arrived inside a minute. This is about last night, obviously. It's petty. A call came in on top of that. I let it ring through and drift into voicemail. A third message. I'm not the villain you're trying to make me. Then, you left me on the curb like trash. The phrasing tried to stick. I watched it slide off. I turned the sound off and left the phone face down. The apartment reasserted itself, spoon against bowl, the soft click from the radiator, the elastic quiet that makes even a refrigerator seem attentive. When I finally picked the device up, a voicemail badge waited. I listened to it once. Nina's voice climbed and dipped in the space of a minute, each sentence looking for a foothold and not finding one, an accusation, a justification, a sudden pivot to injury. A warning about consequences, a plea, a note of triumph that arrived too early and broke into static at the end. I deleted it, not out of anger, but to return the room to temperature. By morning, the messages had changed shape. The late-night edge had worn off. New texts arrived with that strained softness people use when they address the version of you they wish existed, the one they can still bargain with. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You know me better than that. Can we please talk like adults? I poured coffee and carried the cup to the window. The river lifted a dull shine out of the first good light, and somewhere below my building a delivery truck's gate clanked into place. I answered none of it. I would have preferred for the noise to stay contained between two phones, but Nina and I were not two phones. We were a constellation of people who played trivia on Tuesdays and barbecued in backyards when the weather admitted it. I met Nina through Jonah, who at any given moment can tell you the origin of any idiom and who loves introducing strangers as if making a new chord. Our broader circle includes Tess, whose sense for other people's temperature is unnervingly accurate, Owen, who laughs exactly when a joke deserves it, and Priya, who knows the shortest route to the good bakery and is always right. At noon Thursday, the circle lit up. Jonah texted me privately first. Hey, what's going on with Nina? She's saying you bailed on her at night in a rough neighborhood and now you're messing with her landlord. I looked at the words for a moment, admiring the velocity with which stories can take the most efficient path from the center to the edge. I called Jonah. I didn't abandon anyone, I said. We were outside a well-lit bistro. She asked if my car was a rental because if it was, she wasn't going to waste her time. I said goodnight and left. Jonah exhaled through his nose. Okay, that changes the geometry. He hesitated. She's also telling people you're retaliating through the building. The building, I said, is managed by Mr. Whitaker. I asked him to end a temporary concession I'd requested in the first place. He posted a notice per the lease. That's the whole story. He was quiet again, then said, She's in the group chat right now. Do you want in or do you want me to say something? I don't want a debate, I said. Debates are a poor substitute for weather. Not how that expression goes, he said, mostly to be Jonah, then added, Tess is going to send you screenshots, I think. She did. A series of captures blinked into my messages, Nina's paragraphs longest at the beginning tapering as responses failed to confirm them. He has a temper. He left me to figure out how to get home. He's interfering with my housing. A few uncertain emojis from people who didn't want to take sides, 2 polite question marks, and Owen's loan. What happened exactly that hung there like a coat on a hook waiting for a wall? I scrolled back through my own log. The screenshot I needed sat at the top of Monday morning like a card placed with quiet confidence, a clean list of 21 missed calls from Nina stacked between 12:10 a.m. and 7:40 a.m., the timestamp spaced like breath, like doubt, like stubbornness. I took one shot that framed the unmistakable pattern and sent it to Tess. If they're going to talk about me, I'd like to say one thing exactly once. Can you add me for a minute? She added me. My phone bloomed with the velocity of an ongoing conversation, then paused as the system noted a new presence. A few dots surfaced. I waited for the thread to settle, then posted the screenshot without caption. No arrows, no circling, no underlining. Just the thing. The silence that followed did what silence does best. It made 2 minutes feel like a small, complicated hour. I watched the ellipses dance and disappear as if people were rehearsing their first lines and deciding they weren't worth saying. Owen typed, "Whoa. Priya. That's a lot." Jonah. Not the vibe of someone afraid to be alone at night. Nina's reply arrived in a rush that tripped over itself. He's twisting this. I called because I was worried. He wasn't answering. I thought something happened. I stared at the screen and felt nothing useful to type. Inside the chat box, my cursor blinked like a metronome that only belonged to me. I wrote exactly one sentence and pressed send. I'm not going to argue. Believe whatever you prefer. Then I asked Tess privately to remove me again. She did, and the sudden quiet on my phone felt like a room when someone opens a window and the sound of the street rearranges the air. 5 minutes later, the private messages began to arrive, tiny boats separating from a larger ship. Jonah. I should have checked with you first. I'm sorry. Owen. You handled that well. If you want to get a drink later, I'm around. Priya sent a single leaf emoji. Her language for change is happening, and that's the season for it, which is as close as our group comes to sentimentality. I thanked them without elaboration and put the phone back on the table. The remainder of the day behaved like any day that has been interrupted, and then persuaded to continue. I proofed a document for work, skipped a meeting that would have been a meeting about scheduling another meeting, and walked to a corner deli for a sandwich with too much mustard. When I returned, an email from Whitaker sat in my inbox with the subject line, "Posted." Inside the notice of rent adjustment date stamped September 9th, mailed and posted effective November 1st. He had included a scan of the envelope as if to prove that even the mundane theater of certified mail had been performed. I replied, "Thank you, appreciated." He sent a thumbs up in return, the closest thing to affection he allows in business. That evening, the building changed its key from day to night. Down the hall, someone practiced scales on a trumpet. On the floor above, a child ran 3 quick steps and then stopped as if a parent had placed a palm on a small shoulder. I made tea and sat by the window watching a pair of cyclists declare an informal race to the next light. It was not tranquility exactly. It was the right proportion of my life to other people's lives. Near 9, Tess called. "Do you have the capacity," she asked, without preamble, "for one more social thing today?" "For you," I said yes. "I won't keep you," she said. "I removed you from the chat because you asked and because you were right to ask. I thought you should know that Nina has pivoted to telling a story about how you manipulated the rent to punish her. People are skeptical. Not because they prefer you, but because screens full of calls are heavy objects. I appreciate the update," I said. "She's also implying you left her somewhere unsafe," Tess added carefully, "and that part doesn't scan. The restaurant is where Priya's parents go after concerts. The curb has valet stands and fairy lights. It's not, you know." "I know," I said. I let a small interval pass. "I don't plan to chase this around the room. If people need more from me, they can ask." "They won't," she said. "We're older than we used to be." Then lighter. "Come to trivia next week." "Jonah says he can't carry the literature round alone." "I'll think about it," I said, which in our circle is the formal phrase for probably yes. We said goodnight. I slept. No dreams I could bring back to daylight. In the morning, the city had shifted to that early fall register where even the bus drivers looked briefly like conductors. I carried a paper bag of apples up 3 flights because the elevator was occupied and ate one over the sink while the faucet ran. The apple was too tart. I finished it anyway, and still, even with the chat behind me and the notice posted the day, parceled out small errands of attention from Nina's direction. New messages appeared on my screen as I was walking past the river, the phone's haptic tap against my leg, like a reminder from a calendar I had never agreed to. "You had no right to involve your building in this. You're trying to make me homeless. You always needed control." Each sentence tried to arrange itself into a larger theory. The theory didn't land. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb and watched a cormorant take up residence on a half-drowned log and consider the advantages of looking unbothered. Around lunch, Owen called and said, "I'm 2 blocks from your office with a very uneven sandwich. If I split it, will you pretend it's fair?" We took our unreliable halves to a bench. He chewed, swallowed, and said, "I'm not calling to judge or fix. I just want to say I saw the screenshot and it edited the conversation in my head." "Screenshots are bad literature," I said. "They're also sometimes enough." He nodded. "I like you better when you answer questions with sentences," he said, smiling to remove the sting. Then softer. "You look steadier than I expected." "I feel like someone returned a set of keys I didn't realize I'd lent out," I said. He considered that and said, "Okay." On the walk back, he pointed at a dog whose enthusiasm for a stick bordered on career ambition. It felt good to laugh at something that only wanted what it wanted. The next day was Friday. Work required more attention than it deserved. At 4, Whitaker called, "Just a courtesy," he said. "She confronted me in the hallway and told me you were retaliating." I told her concessions are discretionary and referenced the clause. She tried to get me to say it was personal. "I don't do personal in hallways. I do hallways." "Thank you," I said. She also mentioned late payments. He added casual as a weather report. 2 instances on record. Doesn't matter, just context. "Understood. She'll either calm down or select a different stage," he said. "Either way, the notice stands." We hung up. I looked at the clock and decided that staying at my desk would be an act of charity no one had asked for. I went home through side streets, letting the grid decide my pace, and bought a paperback from the table outside the used bookstore, where the owner arranges novels to resemble conversation rather than inventory. The clerk stamped the inside cover with the store's rubber oval as if the book were traveling internationally. That night, the phone stayed mostly quiet. A few stray messages arrived from numbers I didn't recognize, friends of friends asking for context, which is to say permission to keep believing one version of events without the nuisance of doubt. I answered none of them. The city occupied itself, I let it. On Saturday, I took the long path in the park that traces the water and watched a group of high school rowers try to locate a rhythm that would make their coach stop shouting. I bought a coffee in a paper cup whose lid never quite aligned with the cup itself, then sat on a low wall and drank carefully. For an hour, I thought of nothing in particular, which is the lightest kind of thinking. In the afternoon, Maya called from her kitchen where I could hear the background clatter of pans claiming importance. "You sound better," she said without hello. "I am," I said. "Do you need me to say 'I told you so'?" she asked, capturing in 6 words the essential generosity of siblings. "You don't," I said. "Good," she replied. "I am busy and can only afford the abridged gloat." A pause. "I'm proud of you for not arguing in public. That's a trap I would have sprung with both feet." "I had help," I said, from a log of 21 missed calls. She said, satisfied. "Documents, the only love language that never lies." We talked about other things, the plant in her window that refuses to act like a plant, the complicated neighbor who has taken an interest in her mail, a recipe she promises will fix my mistrust of lentils. When we hung up, I cleaned the kitchen with the vigor of someone who has been told a cure exists and is willing to meet it halfway. By evening, the air had turned the kind of clean that makes streetlights seem newly installed. I walked to the corner store for seltzer and almonds, and on impulse bought a bag of chips that reminded me of afternoons after school when time seemed like something you could fold. On the way back, I passed a couple in their 20s, arguing with the good faith of people who still believe arguments can change the nouns they're made of. I wished them luck without stopping. Sunday morning opened like a book you've already read, and again anyway, I did laundry, which is to say, I recommitted to the idea that cotton can be made to behave. I ironed exactly 1 shirt and decided virtue should be measured in smaller units. I read the paper the way I always do, back to front, as if arriving at facts through culture makes them easier to consume. At noon, I met Priya at the farmer's market and listened while she negotiated with a man selling mushrooms as if they were family and not fungi. She won, of course. She always does. Late in the afternoon, sunlight slanted along the hallway outside my door, turning even the scuffed baseboards into a proposition. I stood there longer than the view justified. Inside, my phone sat where I'd left it, a rectangle that had learned how to behave. I powered it on long enough to check the weather for the week and to delete a promotional email that promised to repair things that weren't broken. Then I put it down again. When evening came, it brought with it nothing grand, just a small sequence of choices made in a tone I could live with. I cooked something simple and convincing, ate at the table instead of over the sink, and left the dishes until the water in the tap ran hot. Outside, the river kept doing its practiced imitation of certainty. The day folded itself with care and closed. The weekend arranged itself into ordinary tasks, laundry, a bookshop visit, a walk by the river. But beneath all that neatness, something unreturned kept tugging. I had let Nina borrow a watch months ago, a slim vintage piece that belonged to my grandmother, a gold oval face on a woven mesh band that always looked like light pressed thin. She'd worn it to a charity gala where the lighting had made everything look better than it was. When the night ended, she'd said she'd keep it safe until our next dinner. There hadn't been a next dinner. I texted her once after the rent notice went out. "Brief neutral, I need to pick up my grandmother's watch this week. Let me know what time works." Her answer took an hour and arrived swaddled in gentleness. "I'm not comfortable seeing you right now." "Things are tense," I replied. "No meeting needed. Leave it with the front desk or text when you're home and I'll stop by." 5 minutes. Another hour, another tone shift. I think I may have misplaced it. The words sat on the screen like a glass knocked over in slow motion. No crash yet, but enough gravity to predict the sound. I called Maya. She didn't say hello. "Is this about the watch?" She asked, the clatter of a pan somewhere at her end turning the question into an announcement. "She says she can't find it," I said. "No," Maya said without heat. "That's not the day we're having." I could almost hear her roll up her sleeves. "Start with what we know. She liked that watch." People who like things show the things they like to other people. Maya's method is simple. Look in the obvious place everyone insists is clever. She opened social media while we stayed on the phone. Nina's account greeted us with the curated Life Plates shoes, a hand resting casually on a menu like a signature. "Hold on," Maya said. "Brunch at Elena's last Sunday." I heard the soft inhale she does when a puzzle piece clicks. Zooming. There it is. She sent the screenshot before describing it, letting the image speak by arriving Nina's wrist propped on the rim of a coupe glass, the woven gold band clear the small oval dial catching ambient light. The date stamp sat in the corner like a notary seal. "That's the watch," I said. "Of course it is," Maya said. "Send me anything you have from Mom." Our mother, who files the memories with the fervor of a librarian, had the family jewelry appraised years ago after a neighbor's apartment was burgled. I searched my email for the word appraisal and found a PDF I hadn't thought about since she sent it, 3 pages itemized with photographs taken on a towel my mother insists is not white but cream. The watch had its own line Leonie R. gold mesh bracelet watch serial number engraved inside the case back, approximate replacement value listed beneath in polite numerals. I forwarded the file to Maya. Perfect, she said. We have provenance value image, that's a set. We're not storming anything, I said. We are not storming, she agreed. We are arriving. Polite, punctual, and unwilling to leave without the object that belongs to us. Her voice softened half a notch. I'll meet you in the lobby in an hour. The building where Nina lived, our building, has the kind of foyer that makes even bad moods look dressed. The floor is checkerboard stone that cleans up better than it deserves to, and the mailboxes along the right wall are brass with keyholes shaped like promises. Mr. Whitaker had posted the rent notice 2 days earlier. His printed copy of the memo to file was tucked into the office doorframe like a bookmark. Maya was already on the velvet bench under the mirror when I arrived, scrolling through her phone with concentration. She looked up, studied my face the way only a sibling can, and stood. We're going to do this like a diagram, she said. A knock. B ask. C evidence. D exit with watch. No improvisation. I don't like diagrams, I said. You like conclusions, she replied. Diagrams are how conclusions behave in hallways. We took the elevator because it was there, and because the 4 flights up would have offered too much time to imagine unhelpful speeches. On the 3rd floor, the hallway smelled like fresh paint and distant lemon. Nina's door was 2 down from the stairwell, a modern slab with a peephole that always seemed to be looking first. I rang. A pause, then the intercom crackle. Who is it? It's Adrian, I said. And my sister Maya. We're here for the watch. Another pause. Locks can pause. It's a quality of sound you learn from apartment living. The door opened the width of a face. Nina wore a sweatshirt and that kind of polished fatigue people arrange on their features to make conflict look like something that happened to them. This isn't a good time, she said. We'll be quick, Maya said. We're only here for the watch. I told you I can't find it, Nina said, looking past me at the elevator as if more help might emerge if she held the silence correctly. Maya lifted her phone and turned the screen outward without stepping forward. The brunch photo filled it edge to edge. Last Sunday, she said. Elena's. That's the watch. Nina's mouth moved first. The words assembled a beat late. That's not there are lots of watches that look like. Maya, who teaches teenagers and knows exactly how long a lie can stand on one leg, slid the appraiser's PDF from a document sleeve like a card trick. This is the appraisal, she said, tapping the line with her fingernail. Serial number inside the case back. Our grandmother's name in the description. Replacement value. We don't need to argue adjectives. Nina's eyes touched the page and bounced off as if contact might leave a mark. He told you to do this, she said to me, skipping the watch to reach for a narrative. About the rent? About this? It's all the same thing with you control. We're here for the watch, I said. My voice sounded calm because it was attached to a single task. If it's in the apartment, I can wait here while you get it. If you prefer, you can bring it down to the front desk and I'll collect it there. She opened the door another inch, then stopped it with her knee. You can't threaten me, she said. No one's making threats, Maya said. We're naming an object and asking for its return. If you've misplaced it, we'll file a report with a photo and the appraisal so that if it surfaces in a shop, it finds its way back. The word report rearranged the air. Nina swallowed. Something in her face pride fear habit worked through its options. I watched the calculus without counting. Finally, she said, wait here, and closed the door. Maya and I stood side by side in a corridor painted a color manufacturers call eggshell and humans call white. Far down the hall, a television vocalized the echoes of a cooking show. The elevator grumbled and did not arrive. Maya shifted her weight and then stilled herself again. 5 minutes is a long time in a hallway. By the time the latch turned, my brain had written 3 unhelpful second acts. The door opened. Nina held the watch between thumb and forefinger, the way someone holds a hair they've just pulled from a sweater. She extended it toward me and kept her gaze trained just past my shoulder. Here, she said. Satisfied. Thank you, I said. I took the watch and looked at it the way you look at a quiet face for signs it has been taught not to speak. The clasp worked. The mesh hadn't kinked. The crystal held a new scuff near the 2 that would polish out. I did not open the case back in her hallway. I did what mattered and placed the watch in the small felt pouch I'd brought, the one that still smelled faintly like the lacquered box where my grandmother kept it. Maya slid the appraisal back into its sleeve. We're done, she said simply. Nina's expression flickered. Anger, embarrassment, calculation like a porch light deciding whether to cooperate with a censor. You think you're so decent, she said quietly to me, not as an attack, more as a dare to answer. I chose not to take the dare. I put the pouch in my inner jacket pocket and buttoned the jacket. Maya thanked her for opening the door. We turned. The stairwell door swung light on its hinge and closed behind us with a sound that landed exactly where it was meant to. In the lobby, Mr. Whitaker looked up from his desk as we passed. He didn't ask, and I didn't explain. Still, he noticed the small felt pouch in my hand. He gave a single nod, the kind that belongs to completed checklists. Outside, the late afternoon had reached that polite brightness that turns the tops of cars into a row of dull coins. Maya walked with me to the corner. "You okay?" she said. "Yes," I said. "I meant it." "Good." She squeezed my arm once and turned toward the train, the strap of her bag already finding its diagonal across her coat like a practiced line. At home, I put the watch on the table and for the first time all day, sat very still. I made a small workspace clean cloth soft light and opened the case back with the thin pocket tool my grandfather used to call a proper thumbnail. The engraving looked exactly like itself, LR, in my grandmother's tidy serif, the serial number crisp beneath. I closed the back with care. The apartment had taken on that generous silence of evening, the pipes stuttering to announce hot water to someone else's sink. Footsteps on the stair, pausing to negotiate a package. I returned the watch to the pouch and slipped it into the safe place I should never have lent from. The room resumed its usual shape around it. I washed my hands not because they were dirty, but because ritual gives a thing its edges. Through the window, the river wore the last of the light like a borrowed shawl and then let it go. The watch went back where it should have lived all along. After I closed the safe, the apartment resumed its ordinary geometry table chair, the rectangle of window where the river makes its slow argument that time is continuous. I rinsed the little pocket tool my grandfather once called a proper thumbnail, dried it on the hem of a dish towel, and put it away. The evening held. By midweek, Mr. Whitaker called with the tone of a man reading a meter. "Administrative update," he said. "Ms. Alvarez, he refuses to use first names with tenants, has indicated she will not renew. Lease ends October 31st. She objected to the concession being revoked. I pointed to Clause 3 and the signed lease. She mentioned retaliation. I mentioned documentation. Conversation concluded." He cleared his throat. "A young couple applied this morning. Solid references. If approved, they'll take Unit 3C at market starting November 1st. "Thank you," I said. Posted the legally required notices, he added. Filed the rest. That's the story. In our circle chat, Quiet did most of the work. Jonah sent a question mark at some point and then deleted it. Tess posted a trivia reminder without punctuation, which is how she removes heat from a room. Owen sent a link to a comedy bit about customer service that made everyone type "ha" in different spellings. Priya texted me separately to confirm our raid on the mushroom stall would proceed on Sunday. 2 names I recognized, people who knew Nina better than they knew me. Liked one of her posts and replied to a caption that had nothing to do with any of this. That, too, is a kind of choosing. I walked the river path, let the days reset their angle. The watch was a small weight in the safe, but the absence of it from my thoughts was the better weight. Emails concerned deadlines and page counts. The deli on my corner burned a batch of onions and the smell hung in the street like a lesson no one had asked to learn. I slept and woke, and the city did its competent impression of permanence. A week later, I found myself at the property, not because of Nina, but because Whitaker had asked me to sign a seasonal maintenance authorization for the boiler company. His office is a glass box annex behind the lobby that smells faintly of paper and graphite. On his desk sat 2 neatly stacked application packets for 3C Marta and Elias, late 20s, a teacher and a junior architect, each with letters that sounded like real people wrote them. On the floor beside his chair was a squat fiddle-leaf fig in a plastic grower's pot waiting for a decision. "They brought the plant to see the light," he said, catching my look. I told them the building gets morning sun. They said plants prefer routines, hard to argue with that. He had already decided. The papers were a formality. I signed where he had tabbed the pages and watched him place each sheet into its sleeve as if filing were a performance that deserved applause. When we were done, he pushed a stamped envelope toward me. "Copy of the renewal denial," he said. "For your records." "I don't need it," I said. "You don't?" He agreed and slid it back to his side. "But I do." He lifted his mug, frowned at the contents, and turned the frown toward the hallway as if the building owed him better coffee. On October 30th, an email arrived from Whitaker with a subject line that could have been a weather report, keys collected. The body of the message was 3 sentences long and included a photo of 2 labeled keys beside a folded parking permit. No commentary. The next morning, another message, 3C rented. He attached a snapshot of the new couple standing in the empty living room, a rectangle of sunlight laying itself across the floor like a reversible rug. They were both grinning in that specific way people grin when a room has just learned their names. The friend group redistributed itself with the minimal ceremony adults bring to rearrangements. Trivia happened. I went. We lost magnificently on a music round and one on geography because Jonah can pinpoint cities by their rainfall patterns. On the walk home, he asked how I felt, and I told him I liked the sound of my own apartment at night, which was both an answer and not. One Saturday late afternoon, I sat in the window seat of a coffee shop that warms its pastries longer than necessary and makes up for it by opening the door to the oven so you can see heat, not just feel it. Through the glass, I watched a new silver Mercedes nose into a space in front of the bank next door. The driver was a man in his late 50s, well-dressed in the loose, expensive way money prefers. Nina sat in the passenger seat, posture, precise sunglasses pushed up into her hair. They spoke. I couldn't hear them. Whatever he said sharpened the air between them. He gestured with an open hand as if indicating a map only he could see. She answered with an economy I recognized. He shook his head once and got out, said something else through her open window, then closed the door and walked into the bank. She remained. For a long half-minute, she didn't move. Then she looked straight ahead as if the street were an audience and she was waiting for it to applaud or boo, so she would know which direction to face. A driver behind them tapped a horn. She adjusted the mirror and not herself. She picked up her phone, scrolled, put it down, picked it up again. From my angle, her reflection in the black glass of the bank window doubled and then tripled as the sun shifted. I finished my coffee. On my way out, I passed close enough to see the faint thread of her old bracelet indentation on the skin below the watch line. She didn't see me. The doorbell of the bank gave its small bell noise. The man inside took a number from a red dispenser and sat without looking at the door. The street smelled like damp leaves and something sweet from the pastry case. My Volvo waited half a block down, wearing a thin smear of city dust and the memory of a drizzle that hadn't become rain. I unlocked it. The door hinge made the modest sound it always makes. The seat received me with its familiar compromise. On the passenger floor, a library book reminded me to be home before closing. I started the engine. The dash lights performed their brief test, found everything as it should be, and settled into the usual grammar of speed and temperature. Traffic along the avenue was unrushed. A cyclist carved a clean line past the idling cars. A dog refused to cross and then changed its mind. At the light, I turned left, the indicator ticking like a small clock that belonged only to this cabin. In the mirror, a row of storefronts stitched themselves into a moving quilt. The bank slipped out of frame. The coffee shop's awning did too. I put my hand on the wheel at the place where the leather has thinned slightly from habit and let the car take me forward the street, unspooling at a pace that matched my breathing. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.